This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode contains spoilers from the Cotemporary Mythos series. There are also mentions of Avatar, Mass Effect, Xena, Doctor Who, and Firefly. For full list, please see show notes.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are welcoming back our friend Carly Spade to discuss her new release of Love and Forge,
a Neosphere novel, which is a part of Beyond a Contemporary Mythos.
Welcome back, Carly.
Welcome.
Hi, Carly Spade here, USA Today bestselling author of fantasy romance, I guess you'd say. I actually am the author of the Contemporary Mythos series, and I am here to talk about the first in my new spin-off series from that called Beyond a Contemporary Mythos. And I'm excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you back. Carly, my first question for you, I guess, is more of a statement. This is what everything was leading up to. Would that really kind of be a correct sentiment? The foundations of contemporary mythos have brought you here. I personally see a lot of you in this book.
Yes, and there's a reason for that. This idea and an adult pirate fantasy mixed with Greek mythology, which if you've read Poseidon or any, you get where I'm going with that. Those two ideas were actually ideas way before the Contemporary Mythos series even became a thing or was even an idea in my head. But at the time when I came up with those ideas, which I think was about 4 years ago, cyberpunk and even pirates were just not in right then. Nobody really cared. And cyberpunk, a lot of people didn't even really know what it was. And so I just didn't think that it was the right time. And Hephaestus being a supernatural galactic portal jumping bounty hunter type deal, again, that's always been the idea. But at the time, I didn't know how it would be accepted. And I'm actually glad that I waited, because I don't think that I personally as a writer was ready to tackle the world building that this book entailed. I wasn't ready. And writing so many books in between, I couldn't tell you right now how many they were. It was at least 7, I think 8, maybe something like that. But in between time really helped me develop just my craft. And so I think that yes, you are absolutely right. I knew going in that these two stories that I had 4 years ago, this was the way they were going to come about, because then everybody is familiar with my Mythos series, or if they're not, these books will in turn let them go back and get familiar with the Mythos series. But for those that follow me all this way, they are familiar with enough with the characters. But for somebody new coming in, you don't have to have followed the Mythos series either. It can completely stand on its own. But I've always wanted to do this Hephaestus Aphrodite story since I was probably 12. I didn't know that it was going to be a cyberpunk type deal until 4 years ago, but I have always liked them as a couple. And yeah, there's a lot of me and my husband in this, which I didn't even realize until I was probably in my final revisions as I was kind of going through it. And we weren't friends to lovers type deal. But our personalities are very, for me, are very obvious in the characters. So it's actually very even special there too. Just knowing that. So.
Like you said, I think one of the great things about this book is it makes you want to go back and read. Like anybody wants to be like, well, who are these other people? Where along the timeline would you say that this kind of lays? Because we really know that it's sometime before Ares and Harmony are kind of established, but we also at the same time, and know that Eros and Alani have their daughter, but we also know that Z isn't with Kira yet, because Heph and Aphrodite are already saying, like, making jokes like, oh yeah, when's he gonna settle down?
And I honestly did a lot of research on the science behind time travel, space-time, all that kind of stuff. It is crazy, by the way. And I had a hard time. I eventually came to a mental grasp of it, and then I said, okay, how am I going to explain this? I saw an analogy using pool balls, and it was about the only way that I could think of having Heph explain it to the reader, kind of try the best that I could. But the whole theory is that the past, present, and future can all exist at the same time. And what happens within either the past or the future can have a direct reflect on each of them. And so technically, their story is happening almost at the same time as Zeus. That's kind of what's going on here. And the reason why Ares wasn't supposed to be in the future as long, which was why when he ends up going back, all of a sudden, his book already happened. And so and Eros, he really hardly ever goes into the future. So all of his stuff had already been established. But it's really difficult. But that's the thing about science fiction too, is that they always play on time, dimensions. Comic books do it too. If familiar with the Marvelverse or even DC, they have several Earths that coexist at the same time, and people coexist at the same time. But for me, I figured because they are Greek gods and they have been around since, the dawn of time, and they are immortal, that there is no other carbon copy of them anywhere in the universe. So when they go to another planet or dimension or a future or the past, they are directly affecting their timeline, because they're it. That's all that exists. And so that's why I have so many nods for, I am definitely doing another book for this. I didn't intend it, but as I was writing it, it became something way more than I was originally going for. And I have no issue with it because I love this cast, and I'm not done with them. And I had a hard time even letting go. I spent longer on revisions than I wanted to, because I just kept adding and adding, because I did not want to let them go. But there's definitely going to be another book, and it's going to be a really huge, not a wrap up, but it is going to be kind of there's going to be a reason for all 6 of those previous Mythos books, and the reason why all of that happened, and why Gaia had said that there's going to be this new wave and it needs to happen, et cetera, because something really huge is about to happen, and they're all going to be involved, basically.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm like, would it be fair to say this is the longest book that you've read thus far, or that you've written so far?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I average, my Mythos series is more based on contemporary romance, so I kind of try to keep it at a generous 65 to 75-ish thousand words, which is kind of a happy place for that genre. But with this, just because of the world building and because of the character development, and because I wanted somebody that hadn't read the Mythos books coming in, being able to kind of, oh, okay, so here's Ares. A lot of people are already familiar with my Ares, but I wanted somebody new to make sure that they were familiar with my type of Ares, and that I am not going off of what Homer did for Greek mythology. I am saying no to all of that, and I just want to make sure they realize this is my interpretation. So I had a lot of, and the world building, there's this world, the cyberpunk world, that has, a little bit of its own language and its own type of living, and yes, it's like a dystopia type environment, which is what essentially cyberpunk is. But I just wanted to establish that, this isn't necessarily even Earth, but it's a copy kind of Earth, but in a dystopia type environment. And so because I knew all of that in my head, I had to make sure that I took the time to explain all that and world build, and that took more words. So, but I'm ecstatic to have something as fleshed out as it is. And not that I love contemporary romance in my Mythos series, but I knew I had more to offer, and I'm excited to be able to show all the different genres that I've really wanted to write in that I couldn't do with a modern day restrictive setting of the Mythos series. And I wanted to stick to that because somebody going in would know, okay, this is contemporary romance. It's taking place in our modern day. And so I don't have the liberty of saying, okay, well, now we're going to go back to pirate times. And I didn't have that liberty. That would have been completely just too off the wall for something saying this is contemporary romance. So I'm very excited to be able to explore all the genres that I've wanted to. And I would say space fantasy and pirates and everything like that. All of that is actually where I even started when I started full blown writing past fan fiction. So yeah, sci-fi, space fantasy type stuff that is more me than anything else, to be honest with you. So
when I was reading this, I got kind of like an Altered Carbon kind of vibe when I was going through the world building and things. So it was very easy to visualize. And I have to say, obviously, if you're watching the video of this, I'm in all pink and I have my Aphrodite heart. I love what you have done with Aphrodite here. And you saying that you are moving away from what the, I'm going to say like the canon myths, whatever. We don't need to worry about those. But what you have done is you have just kind of transformed her into somebody that I loved growing up on Xena and Hercules, obviously, but she is just this like pink, gorgeous glitter warrior machine, and I love it. So Can you kind of walk me through like how you settled on this version of Aphrodite and also of your version of Heph? Because, that's a myth that they have a myth.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
So, I didn't go back and watch the episodes because I didn't want it to have too much influence on me. I went back after I was done, completely had my book turned in, no turning back now, can't do anything. And I went back and watched the original episode of Hercules where Aphrodite meets Hephaestus for the first time. And I had to smile to myself because I was thinking, I remembered more of this than I thought. She even makes a joke about him being kinky because he puts her in a pair of handcuffs because he's just trying to make sure she doesn't port away because he needs to tell her something. And I was like, I didn't even remember that when I was writing, but apparently it was like in the back of my head. But I have always loved the way that show depicted Hephaestus, Aphrodite, and Ares. And I respected the fact that it was the only thing I'd ever seen from that when I was that age, of anything that I saw that did not do the whole Ares and Aphrodite having an affair, brother, sister still, knowingly having an affair, and she cheats on Hephaestus and that whole thing blows up, and big mess, gross, disgusting mess to me. But anyway, that show didn't do that. They actually made Ares and Aphrodite have this really fun sibling, like joking around relationship, but a good one. And Hephaestus in that first episode, many actors played him, but that actor played in that episode. He was my favorite, and he was just I just never thought that she could ever love him because he was ugly, and blah, blah, blah. And I always found it that she sees him for him past the scar, and he sees her beyond her beauty. He sees this beautiful person. And so I always loved that aspect, and that is what I wanted to see, period. And I really have not even found that in many books or anything. They really just go the other route of the drama. With Aphrodite, I've always liked this idea of her she loves to play dress up. She loves being a little girly girl. She loves pink. It's all her. But at the same time, she can also, especially when her family's involved, she wants to be able to protect them, kick ass beyond what her actual powers of what the universe has said what should be her powers. She is a woman who wants to go beyond that. And I don't necessarily I think a lot of the books, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but a lot of the books lately with female characters, they take the female empowerment to me, and they're going a little bit beyond that. They almost become masculine, and they become man haters, or they become something, that I don't think that they have to necessarily lose their femininity to also be a badass warrior. And so I think that's where I went with Aphrodite, honestly, this is what I've wanted to see with a female badass heroine for the longest time is one that loves to wear dresses, and she'll wear a dress in battle, but then she also gets some like armor, but Hef is making sure to make the armor still feminine and, you know, and something that she would like Xena fought in a skirt and breastplate, you know, like she still was feminine, but badass. And so I wanted to maintain that and even make her a little bit more, obviously she's more girly than Xena ever was, but that's Aphrodite to me. I will never see Aphrodite as something else than, you know, she is the goddess of love, period. So she's still going to have her girly tendencies. And I wanted her to be a closet nerd because that's also something that I have really dear in my heart. I'm not so much closet anymore, but I used to be because it was questionable how people were going to react to it. And I was afraid of that reaction. It could be a good one, bad one, or it could be, you know, an over-the-top reaction that I didn't want to deal with. So I definitely lent that part to her, and I thought that it would be an interesting connection for her and Hef to have too, because he's not a closet nerd. He's out there. I am a nerd. But he has a different type of, you know, he's into Legos and video games, and she's into tabletop and action figures. And I thought a lot of people could relate to that too. I do know that a lot of my fan base has a lot of, you know, fandoms that they're, you know, fans of just like me and everything. And I wanted to throw a lot of that in there. And just say that, yeah, two people can come together and, you know, this circumstances of just not realizing things about each other. If you just take the time, big thing in this book that I'm guilty of it too, is communication. Just talking about it, to be able to just realize that they could have had this so long ago, but they just were so afraid for their different reasons. And, Hephaestus, yeah, so I'm sorry, that was a really winded answer with Aphrodite. And it's funny because I'm going to refer to him as Hephaestus, even though in the book, just so people know, I do have him called Hephaestus because that is the more Greek way of pronouncing and spelling his name, which is why she nicknames him Phi. So just to put that out there. But I will say Hephaestus because that's one people are more used to hearing. But Hephaestus, I knew from when I came up with the idea that I wanted him to be some portal jumping badass supernatural bounty hunter, just really gritty and witty and just, you know, also a cinnamon roll at the same time for Aphrodite specifically. And I knew I wanted to do that, but I didn't know that I was going to give him a British, Aussie, Kiwi vibe until I think 2 years ago. And yes, there was some inspiration from Karl Urban, which ironically, Karl Urban, for anybody who doesn't know, was also on the Xena and Hercules shows. He played several roles.
Several.
Yes, one of them was Cupid / Eros. So it's just all around ironic. But I liked the idea of him having this, you know what, I'm just going to say what I want to say from different cultures that I've picked up along the centuries. And then some of the words I just make up. I don't care. I just talk how I want to talk, walk how I want to walk kind of deal. And that also came into play because he's perpetually had this thing about the scar because it, you know, runs from his forehead all the way down, you know, to his chest. And his mom, his mom threw him from Olympus because he was so ugly to her. And so, yeah, it kind of gave him a complex. And so I think that that's why he is, and so some people he might be slightly over the top, especially in the first chapter, but I did that on purpose because I wanted people to know this is what you're in for. And if it's not something you're into, then you can stop now. But this is what you're in for. So I definitely made sure to full on put his personality in that first chapter. And I actually wrote half of that chapter 3 years ago, I think, because I had his voice in my head and I was like, I have to get this out. And it changed a little bit when I went back to actually fully write it, but at least the core of what I wanted to do, even though I knew I wasn't ready to write the whole book, I knew what I wanted Hef to be right then and there. So I kind of just came up with the concept of having him be able to just be his own person. And this is what he does to kind of hide the fact, and, Aphrodite does say it, and it's true. He uses aloofness and jokes to hide the fact that he is very self-conscious about that scar. And he does decide also to grow the beard, even hide part of it and everything. And he just gets to a point where he just doesn't care anymore and pretty much figures he's going to be alone. And the only action he's going to get is from strippers and stuff like that. So, yeah, he just comes to grips with the fact he's going to be alone forever. But then he just gets this inkling when he sees that bounty, and he doesn't realize it at first, but this is a way for me to be around Aphrodite, even if, a tiny bit forcibly. But for her, I don't think it's forced. I think, for her, she likes it. She likes the chase and they're both just ridiculous. And I love it because they're so in denial for quite a few chapters. And I've always wanted to do something where they're already familiar with each other, so I can skip over that whole getting to know you bit. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just fun that they already knew each other. They knew their tells. They knew so much about each other. And it was just fun to play with that aspect of just, let's get to the brass tacks, because we don't need to get to know each other because we already do. Let's get to the slow burn of them finally realizing the feelings for each other. So yeah, I love this book so much.
It's so fun. And I have a confession. I know you mentioned Carl Urban. When I read this twice. My first read through, I had Kano from Mortal Kombat. That's exactly where I went. So when you say like Carl Urban, I was like, oh, well, I wasn't that far off.
No.
I was very close. So that's very reassuring. I want to kind of circle back to, you have invented kind of like your own curse words and your own swear words. And I love that. Obviously, I'm a huge Farscape fan and, Firefly fan, and we know that they also did that. And you also created all of these new businesses that you did. I love the names of these businesses, and I know that you said in the district, like the district loves a gimmick. How did these come to you? They're so cute and clever.
That's a great question. I will say my favorite is Bows Before Hoes, only because I don't even know how I was trying to think of things like Aphrodite. What would she like? Oh, that clothing store looks fabulous. And I was thinking, okay, like this big pink bow. Okay. And then, so what is a phrase? And it might have even been my husband one time. Maybe we were gaming recently and they've said some kind of joke about bros before hoes. And it might have come to my brain at that point, but it did start with a pink bow, period. And I knew I wanted even the logo design, everything to have a big pink bow. And, honestly, and then even like tortellini in love. I have heard that one before, I'm going to be honest. But I wanted to throw it in there. Anything dystopian, cyberpunky, whatever you want to call it, I promise you will have some form of noodles or ramen or something. They all do, because it is very sustainable and it's super easy to just throw some sauce on there and give it some other flavor. So you will find that in anything. And I knew I wanted Hef to be just an absolute fan of pasta of all kinds. So that's where that kind of came about, is I took it from that. And then the metal, the fake metal, I love that the Marvel universe has adamantium and then DC has kryptonite. And I just like that they have these made up materials that become universal across the entire, and any storyline within those universes involves those made up metals. And the space fantasy that I actually got my agent for, that I hope to get out soon, I made up that metal for that. So I'm actually trying to cross them a little bit so that
that was going to be my question. Yeah, no, that what is going on here is actually coexisting in another galaxy, basically, is what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, Oz I created that originally for my space fantasy that hasn't, been out yet, but I'm working on it, getting it for my agent. But I wanted to throw that in there so that there was something connected. And then, gosh, what other businesses?
And the words, honestly, so I, for any gamers, obviously I played a lot of Cyberpunk 2077 especially, I love that game period, but I actually even started a second playthrough because I wasn't done with my book yet. And I just love the inspiration because it's so immersive. You can walk around and there's so many details and everything. And so I definitely use it as inspiration for my own book. And I really liked, and also even I think Blade Runner and some other really big cyberpunk type movies or whatnot, they have a lot of just made up words, and it makes sense to me because it's their own society at that point. And so why would they be using the same words that we use right now? And so I used inspiration from Cyberpunk and Blade Runner. And yes, of course, obviously my sci-fi shows like Farscape and Battlestar Galactica, all those. But I decided I wanted to do something that meant, cool. And I was I would basically use a thesaurus and look at all words that meant some form of awesome or nice or what have you. And I'd find a word and then try to make it different. And Biffy came from BFF, basically. So they basically took the term BFF and turned it into just Biffy. And I like the idea that it could be used as, yes, you are my best friend, but also as an insult to be like, yeah, sure. Okay, Biffy. And Minty, I don't know. I just, the whole idea of people getting obsessed with cybernetics is so on to me, because I feel like that is what we would do as human beings. If we actually had access like that, we're to the point where you could save up some money like you would do for a tattoo type deal and go get some cybernetics done. I feel like it would become way more of a thing. As of right now, clearly, the idea of a cybernetic means you have to be a millionaire type deal if you even want to think about it. But I think that would seriously be what human society would go toward. And especially, again, if they use propaganda to say, oh, you could call yourself extra minty the more cybernetics you have. And a dystopia society, too, where people are kind of you're grasping at straws for entertainment and, like things to keep you sane and things like that. And I honestly feel like that is the direction they would go. I actually even want to, I think I might at one point, but I want to get a t-shirt design done of a chrome arm and saying, how minty are you, or something like that, because it's just, I like the concept, and I like being able, Hef being able to use it as an insult to people that do, because he knows he doesn't have to, because he's a god, and all the people that come against him, I just like the idea of him using it as a joke.
I'm not so familiar with cyberpunk. I think I should put that out there. Yeah. But that being said, I feel like this book kind of is like when you're experimenting with new genres. I think this is a perfect mixture of to kind of explore, like, look, where do you straddle the line? I want to do something new, because you still get the background with the romance. You already have your familiar characters. Was there any like visuals? Because Laura brought up the show on Netflix, but I was familiar, and I'm thinking specifically with like the traffic system. I immediately went to like either New York and Doctor Who, or even Fifth Element. So like, I guess that really coincides with the world building, but the way you did it felt so seamless. So somebody who was not familiar with the genre felt like, okay, this isn't overwhelming.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose, so I'm glad that did come across, because, if you hop into, let's even just call it a cyberpunk kind of military sci-fi type book, let's say zero romance, and I've read, plenty of sci-fis that there's actually way more in the sci-fi genre that do not have really romance. It's more military action, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but for me, even as a reader, I really need romance anymore. It's just me. It doesn't even have to be a focal point. It can even be like a sub thing going on in the background. But I don't know. it's just how I am anymore. When I was younger, I was reading all kinds of stuff. But for some reason, and maybe it's because I write romance now, where I feel like I'm not honing my craft reading something that's not involving romance. I don't know. But there is a severe lack of it, I think, as far as, yes, there is alien romances and things like that out there, but straight sci-fi with then some romance, legit romance going on. it's really hard to find. And even for me as a reader, I realize it's really hard to find. And so I thought this could be a niche for me, another niche aside from just Greek mythology, but just, actually giving, because I think there are definitely more, women out there that would give it more of a chance if maybe there was a little bit of something like that or something to relate to a little bit more, because there's even just female authors in the sci-fi genre, there's not as many. And so I kind of want to try to get, put my foot in there and and just kind of edge my way in a little bit. And so I had to make sure that I had a general understanding of what cyberpunk was, clearly, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't dipping into other genres, because I've watched so many, just like Laura, I've watched so many sci-fi shows growing up that it starts to sometimes crisscross the genres, and I didn't know, which one specifically might have had those cyberpunk elements. And so I looked up, specifically, if you want to do a cyberpunk, it should include X, Y, and Z. And I said, got it. And it really is down to the point of, it's usually as dystopian environments where they have high technology, but they're bordering on poverty. And then there's this big corpo company that's basically the reason why there's poverty, because they're taking all the money and they don't care. And then the idea of the cars. So not all cyberpunk stories do the idea of hover cars, but I could not do it, because I love the concept of having not only ground traffic, but also aerial traffic still. And usually that aerial traffic is the people that can afford those cars type deal. Or, medics and things like that. Obviously, they would rather be aerial because they can get somewhere faster. So I really had to sit down, and I'll be honest, I didn't have everything figured out from the moment that I started, but I gradually, as I got to those certain points, I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? And I had a couple of hangups here and there, and I would just type in there, come back to this and kind of figure it out. But that's when I'm writing something like this, I do submerge myself with music, and usually the video game that I'm playing, if there's something that's like it, I will be playing it like crazy. So I did play, I don't even want to admit how many hours of Cyberpunk 2077. But that video game, though, period, introduced a lot of people to the genre that did not know anything about it. So for that, I'm thankful too, because it really does get people interested, because if they've played the game and they know of the genre, even from the name of the game, they'll recognize the feel of it in this book. But then you got the magic part of it. And that's something that I also have always loved, the idea and concept of taking sci-fi, but also saying, why can't magic exist too? And that's, my space fantasy that has not been released yet. That is, I mix those two together in that too. So I like the concept of mixing the two, because, if I had to pick between Star Wars and Star Trek, not going to lie, sorry, I will go with Star Wars, because they have the technology, but again, they also have this fantasy element throughout the entire thing. And that is just something that I think that why I never got as interested in Star Trek, because it was very, very techie sci-fi. And so that's what I told myself, that if I ever did anything like this, it would be more along the lines of Star Wars, so that I could have both and call it what Harrison Ford called it, which I loved. He said, this isn't a sci-fi, this is space fantasy. And I love that concept. And so that's what I kind of rolled with. And I'm really, though, glad that you said that you felt comfortable, even though you're not familiar with cyberpunk, because that was 100% my intention. And I didn't want to overdo it, but I wanted to give enough that if it's something that you discovered interested you, maybe you would check out some other, cyberpunk stuff too, because it is a really cool side street of sci-fi that people, I'm sure you've actually seen stuff that you didn't even realize was cyberpunk at the time, but hopefully people will go back and like, wait a minute, Blade Runner was, that kind of was like that, or Fifth Element was too. I mean, all those movies would fall into that genre. So yeah, I'm glad that it didn't overwhelm you.
No, and I say that and I feel like sometimes some of these genres, like you were saying, to have women writers in this specific genre and niche aren't I don't want to say aren't at the forefront, but we know know what the fandom communities are, and we know how fanboys can be. I mean, and not just in like the communities that we enjoy, but even like in a gaming realm. And that can be so intimidating of anybody trying to go into a new space and just like, hey guys, just want to say hi, like want to get a feel for something, and then immediately are on the defense because they're either being attacked or you know, and even like, and not just these genres, like think about if you're like following a sports team or if you're following a new band, well, what was their first single back in 1972 and the three people who wrote the song or, you know, and you're like, I was just trying to enjoy something, but you don't, and that's what you've opened this so beautifully by creating like this world building and the magical elements, because that's fun. I mean, just even, you know, you have the mixture of we have the neosphere, and then you have Aphrodite popping people off with glitter. I was obsessed.
Even if it's blinding people so that Hef can whack him with his hammer axe. I mean, that's still, she did something. And the fact that her powers are all wonky still at that point. So the idea in my brain that even if she didn't mean to do that, I think it's hilariously awesome that she did do it, you know, and then it's just because, okay, well, if the only thing that's going to come out of these hands is glitter, well, here, I'm going to glitter bomb your ass, you know? But yeah, I honestly didn't realize that there was as many women like me that were into, because I mean, you just don't, it's not something that comes up in everyday conversation, you know, like that's not the first thing I say when I meet somebody is, hey, are you into sci-fi? It's like, so I actually didn't realize it until I became a part of, so it's a video game company called BioWare, and they do Mass Effect and Dragon Age as their two biggest properties. And I am a huge, anybody who knows me, I'm a huge Mass Effect fan. Mildly obsessed fan of I'm a huge fangirl of it. And I started getting involved in the community on Twitter, and I found a lot of people, especially when I was doing pitches on Twitter, and one of my comparison titles was Mass Effect. And so I had all these people coming out of the woodwork, mostly women, who were like, wait a minute, this is kind of like Mass Effect? And I said, yeah, especially if you are into the Garrus romance, who, for anybody who's unfamiliar, Garrus is not human. He's completely not. He's an alien, you know, badass sniper type character, and it's somebody that you can romance in that series. And I really didn't realize how many women were into that storyline and just overall the entire universe and everything until I started doing these pitches and making friends and getting involved. And there's a huge area of women that love sci-fi romance specifically. That's, you know, the world is falling down around us type deal, but there's also this, we find time for romance because, you know, I found my person. And so it really motivated me, because then when I realized that there is as much of an audience as there is, that I didn't realize that even with this book, I feel that I've already had people going, wait, you mix cyberpunk with Greek mythology? I've never even heard of that. And so I'm over the moon about it, because it's not even released yet, and just the advanced readers and everything are saying that they've never even heard of a concept like this. And so I'm grateful for it, because I hadn't either, and that's why I did it. So
Well, it's very exciting. And I kind of want to touch on a couple points here. So you mentioned in the beginning of the episode that you did not feel that you could write this book before now, because you just weren't ready with like experience and like skill wise to write it. And I want to get there, but I also want to say that your consistency as a writer is something that is really beautiful to me personally, because Aphrodite, again, as we have said in all of your other books when we talked about them, Aphrodite does not lose her female friendships here. Oh no. She has her graces. They stay with her. They get all of the details. They're like deeply involved in her life. They're there with her business. You know, Thalia is there for the bonding. It is just a very wonderful thing. So your consistency there, I really love. But skipping forward though, Carly, ma'am, this book is spicy.
I was wondering when you guys were going to go there.
Miss Ma'am, I have to say and express my surprise. I did not expect for Heph and Aphrodite to get to the spicy part by chapter 18. I was expecting that at the end of this book, and they were already, doing what they do in chapter 18, and I was like, there is so much left. Where are we going? It was so exciting. So tell me, did it take? No, let me reword. Has your family read this book? And what was this like for you?
Okay, so if anybody's read Zeus was my spicier one, but now this one definitely is even more spicier than Zeus. And there's a reason for that. And I said when I had talked to you guys about Zeus too, I said I will not throw a bunch of stuff in there just for the sake of throwing it in there. There has to be a rhyme and reason for every scene. There has to be for me. And for this one, I found a lot of reasons. I did. Here's the thing. So, I mean, she's the goddess of love. She is used to, let's be honest, she's used to being used. Like, people just, she's the goddess of love. And so who wouldn't want to, have the opportunity to hit that type deal? And, she's also used to being in control because nobody is or they're afraid to try to take control because they wouldn't, satisfy her, or, she's just used to just kind of, doing whatever, whoever, whenever. And it gets, I would honestly think it would get old, like to the point where it's just like, this isn't even, pleasurable anymore. And so again, harking back to the funny that Aphrodite made a joke about him being kinky in the Hercules show. But I was like, this is actually a perfect opportunity. I never really honestly want to go full kind of 50 Shades mode. That's just not my thing. But the what they do in this, just the level, I don't go past a certain point, but the level of it just made sense to me because she is the type of person who is used to having the power over everything and the control. And Heph is finally one that has the cojones to do that for her. But at the same time, the back of his head, he's screaming like, "Oh my gosh, am I doing this? I'm not going to show it in my face, but is everything? Am I doing this all right? Like, I don't know. This is the goddess of love." And I knew that these two were going to be super passionate the moment that it happened. And it like what Orion says at one point, this is, centuries worth of built up tension. So you take a book with two humans where it's a slow burn, then all of a sudden they're just, carnal monkeys with each other because they finally let loose. Well, think about two gods that have been alive for a long time, and this tension has been building up for 1,000 years type deal. Yeah, there's stuff's going to happen. It's going to happen frequently, especially also they're in the midst of action. So there's adrenaline going, and she's finally getting able to fight, which she's never, even felt like she could do before. But with Heph, he's encouraging it. And so there's so many different feelings going on. And, with those two, that's how they express it, and I enjoyed exploring it. As far as my parents, they have not read it yet. They will. And my mother-in-law, again, a stipulation, I will tell all of them, you can read it, just don't talk to me about it.
Don't look me in the eye.
Have they read your other stuff too? So did they not bring it up then?
No, yeah, but just don't talk about it. It's just fine. I just, I know they do. And I am very thankful that I have such a supportive family. So I'm not going to tell them, no, you can't read it. I just really honestly has just not talk about it because it's awkward. I will be honest with you. The hugest reason before Zeus that hung me back from going a little bit more in some of those books was because of that. And I just decided that I'd have a talk with them and just say, look, I love that you support me, and I will never ask you, obviously, not to read my books. But for those particular moments, let's just pretend like you didn't read them. Okay. And so when I got to that mentality, because I knew Zeus was going to have more, period. And I needed to be able to be in a mental state where I didn't hold myself back worrying about that. And so the moment I just stopped worrying about it, and they uphold their promise of not talking to me about it, which they do, and they still do, I can kind of let it fly a little bit more. So I won't say that I will go too much past what this book did. I think I found my happy zone. But it also just really made sense for these two because they're very two passionate individuals. They have been in love for a long, long, long time and really into each other. And so it just makes sense that they go at it like rabbits after everything finally settles. And I think it kind of just adds a little bit. And it's also kind of humorous because you got Orion and Aries that are kind of their third and fourth wheel. And they're like, okay, they're at it again. Let's go get a drink. And so I just think that it's just that kind of moment of they finally found each other. They finally, are connected. And I would imagine they would explore it that way many times.
They're also very sweet. They're when I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, that is really adorable. Like, oh my God. And they're like, it's corny, like all of that between the two of them. It's like, but I like it. It's like, oh, it's very sweet. Big, tough man, soft, small pet. Is that a trope? Because I love that.
Is it a trope? I don't even know.
I feel like it should be if it's not.
Because it made me think of, quite honestly, I'll admit this to you. What is it? It's Con Air. Put the bunny in the box. Like, he's very tough man, dirty man, soft, small, stuffed bunny. But yeah. I was like, is this a trope? So if it is, someone tell us.
I will be 100% honest. I was a little inspired, obviously, by The Mandalorian. You got, the tough, action-y, gruff guy who all of a sudden this little cute little green thing comes into his life. Baby doesn't know what to do with himself, can't take care of himself. And he takes it upon himself to eventually become his dad. And so, I love that. And that's actually one reason why I even keep coming back to that show is I just love that concept of the two of them together. And it's just, I can't get enough of it. So when I was coming up with Hef, again, the bunny was not something that I originally came up with. That didn't even come into play until I started writing. And I was like, you know what? He needs I don't know, like a sidekick, but not a person, and I don't know. And so I did a little bit of research into Greek mythology deeper than and I honestly never knew that there was a thing with Aphrodite and rabbits. But I guess it makes sense because they're kind of representative of fertility. And people would which is really weird because where's the rabbit's just going to hop away, but they would seriously put rabbits on her altar, as a gift to her. I guess they're there briefly, or they would give them as gifts to each other in honor of love and her. And so I like this idea of him having a rabbit. And when he initially adopted it, he didn't realize he was doing it because of Aphrodite loving rabbits. And so that whole thing comes into play too, that he's like, oh, I did get that because you like rabbits. Wow. I didn't even realize that. And it's just, I love it because it's just this little sidekick that's along with them for the entire ride. They have to constantly be conscious of where he is. Is he sleeping? Is he in the pocket? Which pocket did we put him in? And just making sure that this little creature is okay this entire time too, and not just them. And this creature is not a god or magical in any kind. It's an actual legit rabbit. So I've always loved that concept of having to worry about this little creature that can't fend for itself, and is not, human or can talk or anything like that. And I also, the whole Lego thing, I liked this concept of Hef needing to tinker with stuff all the time. And to me, with him being he's also, my research, god of technology, volcanoes, and the forge. So he's not just a forge god, he's also volcanoes and technology. And so it just made sense to me that he would play video games, and it made sense to me that he would build Legos, because he'd be the ultimate Lego builder, just because he's, he builds things and he molds things. And again, just randomly, I'm like, maybe the rabbit likes a He-Man Lego. I don't know.
Stop. That melted my little heart when he's just, oh my God.
He doesn't eat him. He doesn't choke. He just holds on to him.
He just holds him. That's a detail. We have said before, Carly, that you put little details into your books that we just really love. And that's one of them. I just sat there for a minute. That's the cutest thing I've ever heard.
Did you, and just personally, you have dogs.
Do you have a bunny?
Yeah, do you have a bunny? Because these were so specific. I was like, And this
She
is like,
must have one.
this bunny is getting like, he's in these battles with them. I was like, they're more like durable than I realized. She must have a rabbit.
I have personally never owned one, but, and this is probably where this came from too, is my aunt, when I was growing up, I hung out at my aunt's house a lot because my cousin and I were like best friends. And so she had at least 4 or 5 rabbits through the entire time that I was growing up. And my favorite one was named Coco, and it was a floppy-eared, cute as sin little rabbit. And it was so chill. And it's the only one that I even like, because the other ones, some of them would try to bite you, and others were just so hyper or skittish or something. But Coco, I could seriously just put it in the crook of my arm and just pet his belly, and he would just let me, and he didn't care, and everything was right with the world. He was just super chill. So I think that honestly, that's where it came from, because I honestly was under the impression most rabbits to me are really kind of skittish and not really personable. But then I also talked to one of my beta readers who also has a floppy-eared rabbit, and they actually got it for her daughter as a comfort animal. And it's very chill too, where it lets you just pet it and stroke its fur and however you want. It just will just sit there and let you pet it. And so I've been like, then that could also be something for Hef. So I kind of gave him that too, is that him every time he's stroking that rabbit's fur, it's him like trying to calm down, or get your mind in the game or anything like that. So that's also, so Coney the rabbit does something more for him than just be this cute little sidekick. He actually helps to offer comfort to his owner, his quote unquote animal daddy. So it really just piggybacked. It started with this cute idea of let's throw a rabbit in there to, okay, actually he has a legit purpose. So I so much exploration with this book over the span of months when I started writing it. And it just blossomed into something I hadn't started out with, but I'm glad that it got there, because I have an ensemble cast, and I have, this world that I built with words, and all these characters have, development. I have already had so many people asking me, they hope they see an Orion book. Because Orion just becomes this BFF guy that tells it like it is and sees the eye of reason over anybody else. But he does that because he's not in his own stuff yet. So definitely throwing hints out there. I'm definitely going to be even putting more new characters in the next book than what you see already, but I didn't want to put too much in this book because there's already a lot as there is. But the cast of characters is going to expand even more in the second book. And it's been a wild ride, I'll tell you that.
Do you feel like you've had some, the last time we chatted, when we were going through, like, between all the books that you wrote and all the novellas, you were like, I need to breathe, because you're just like, do you feel like you've found that place to breathe yet? Or you're just trying to find, because not only do you have this, you do have the Space Odyssey series that you shared on your socials also, that is, forthcoming.
Yeah. Yes and no. I found a moment to breathe with not having to draft like crazy, but that's already out the window. I'm back to having to draft. It's just never ending, because like with this book, it's done and it's been done for months now, but the marketing, and we just finished doing the audiobook. I'm actually uploading the files tonight and sending them off for processing that it releases the same day as the book and the ebook and everything. So I had to do that too. I had to proof and listen to the audio, make sure the voices were right, which it's the same 2 narrators that did Zeus, so I wasn't, worried necessarily, but there's a lot of Greek names and words and everything in this one, so there was a lot of pronunciation clarifications, let's say. And I even put a pronunciation / reference thing in this book at the back, because there's just so many of them. And there was some of them that I didn't even realize are pronounced a certain way. And I was like, okay, I better tell people that that's how this is pronounced, so that they're aware, like me. It's never ending. I did get a time where I'll say I got a couple weeks, so I guess it's enough, honestly, where I just kind of got to chill and whatever. But then I randomly got my agent, which I wasn't expecting, and I am completely thankful for it. Obviously, it's blissful chaos as I get my book ready to go on submission. But that was unexpected. So I got a little less time than I wanted, but it's fine because I have been sitting on this book for a long, long time, and it's gone through many, 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 many revisions. And I really hope that this is obviously the final one. And when I hand it off to her, she'll get to be able to champion and get it out there the way that I want it. But yeah, now that it's what's called a hybrid author, because I'm hopefully going to have something traditionally published at some point, but also still remain an indie author too for my own stuff. And it's a surreal feeling to be both, and then also be marketing on both and being able to juggle both. But I feel extremely grateful that it finally happened, and hopefully you all can meet that cast of crazy characters too someday. So.
Well, obviously we cannot wait for that. But you're talking about kind of the push that you have to do now. Can you take me through the creation? Because we're winding down here. Can you take me to the creation of your map, your city map? Very helpful, very beautiful. And then I'd also like to touch on the art that you have, because these characters are now in front of us in real life. We can look at these pictures, and also the map. What was that experience like for you? I know you had to reference it when writing it.
I hadn't even really considered a map until I was going through and writing it and going, I don't remember how far this is supposed to be or what direction. And I know there are going to be some readers that are going to say, no, that was not that close or was not that direction. And so I was thinking, whenever you're playing video games, if it's an open world RPG type game, you always have a map. You always have a reference to where you're going, how far something is, and where key, markers are. And I said, screw it. I will do a city map. And so this other author named Dewey, he actually did, he's done a bunch of maps for a bunch of different friends of mine. And I had talked to him briefly, and I just reached out and said, hey, have you ever done a city map? Not, a map, but a city map. And he said he'd done a couple, not too many, but he's really interested because he's not done that many. And so I gave him references of a bunch of different video game maps. And he, we had to do a couple of tweaks because I said, okay, well, Daneland needs to be more, looking like it's separated by a reservoir, or the fringes need to be a lot bigger because it's big open wasteland. Ithaca needs to be the biggest place because I describe it as the biggest. And then Desolation Row needs to be even bigger than Ithaca because that's where all the poverty is. So after he got it right after the revisions I asked him to do. And then I said, hey, what about if we put key markers, like a video game of, bows before hoes, and here's where Hef lives, here's where Orion lives. Because for me, again, that helped me too after I had it to be like, okay, yeah, but Orion lives all the way over here, so they have to have some way of getting there faster. Okay, Ares is with them so they can port. Okay, so they just port over to, okay, we're good. So it was a big thing of my final revision that I was constantly thinking about that. And I'm glad I had the map to reference because I did have to make a couple of tweaks. And I am not saying anything against nitpickers because it is what it is. And, I will own it. So that's why I decided to own it before I released it. And, made sure that I had all those covered. And the artwork, I also decided to do something a little different this time with the people that I commissioned, because there is a lot of amazing, talented artists on Twitter that don't really, they kind of dabble in Instagram and other places, but they're mostly on Twitter, and they are known for the fan art that they do of fandoms like, again, Mass Effect, Dragon Age. That's the only reason why I knew of these artists is because of that. Or the one did cyberpunk fan art. And they just do commissions for people of their original characters, or they do the characters from the game and put them out there. And that's what they're known for. But they are amazingly talented. And so I reached out to all fan art artists this time, all three of them. I don't think I've released, I'm going to be releasing the art of the last piece a couple weeks from now. But they're all from fandoms that I like, that they did fan art for. And they blew me out of the water. They really just nailed the tone, the feeling, and they were really awesome to work with. And the piece that's going to be in the hardback in the front in black and white, and then a color prints for anybody who orders the special edition boxes. And I probably will sell them by themselves eventually at some point. I'm probably going to set up an Etsy shop at some point, because there's a bunch of stuff from this book that I know people are really going to want. But that piece too, of the entire 4-character ensemble of the pivot, it's a scene that you won't get necessarily spoiled by with the art, but once you get to that scene in the book, if you see the art beforehand, you know exactly what scene it's from. He blew me away with that piece, because Aphrodite's dress alone was I gave him probably 12 different photos, and I circled, okay, this part of this dress, this part of this dress, this part of that. And that's how I came up with the dress. Is I found, when she was talking about, okay, I'm just going to take all of these ideas and mash them into a dress. That's kind of what I did when I came up with it. So I really did. I went on Pinterest and I was looking at all these dresses. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are all so pretty. I don't know what to do. And I ended up seriously mashing about 10 to 12 different aspects of dresses into one. Because I wanted my epic dress that people will never forget type deal, that I've read in other books, even like ACOTAR type, dress like deal with that Feyre had and everything. I wanted a dress like that. I wanted people to remember. And I'm not going to lie, I wanted people to have an excuse to cosplay. So I gave Aphrodite a lot of pivotal costumes that you can cosplay. So I did it on purpose, but it also fit her character to constantly change wardrobe. But I also, I wanted people to have plenty of options to cosplay if they wanted to Aphrodite. So,
well, and that was one of the fun things when she got when she got her powers back, she was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much I missed a new look. She needed to be and I want a day look, and I want a night look, and I want a bathroom look. And she was that was one of the things that she was most excited for. She's like, oh, finally I get to be cute again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I liked her the pink crop jacket and halter top and all that stuff, which is what she wore most of the time, that she got from the clothing store, what she ended up wearing most of the time. I just liked that it was a different thing for her, because half talks her into, look, seriously, you're going to look in anything, so just put on a pair of pants, for crying out loud. She's like, okay, well, fine, yeah.
I'm going to make you want me to wear pants, I'm going to make the ones that make my ass look the best. And or when she wants to do the dress, and her brother, Aries, is like, you can't fight in a dress. And she's like, but I got shorts. I love it. I love a short under a dress situation. You never have to worry about the wind again.
That was her figuring out how to have function and beauty at the same time. And that was something that was kind of progressing as even as small as that is, to me, it was something that she had to figure out, because she's just used to just being pretty. And what is the name of that song? There is a song that I used a lot. Oh, the Sit Still and Look Pretty. I don't know if you guys remember that song. But that was a huge, and that's actually on the playlist, because it was a huge thing, because it was just, how beauty queen type people are expected to just sit there and look pretty, and they have this expectation of them, and they're supposed to look flawless at all times and never cry, and if they do, you're supposed to go away to do it, and you make sure your makeup looks good when you come back. And so I wanted her to blossom out of that shell, and then I can look pretty, but I can also be functional at the same time. And that's something that I really wanted to push out there, because you can be badass and feminine at the same time, and also be vulnerable and be, and sometimes be, okay with the guy protecting you, because that was, oh gosh, if you wouldn't have done that, I would have gotten, my head cut off or something, So I just wanted that whole thing of everybody being okay with each other, helping each other, and they're a team. And even just Heph and Aphrodite, they are a team, and there is no, I don't need your help because I am badass and I can do this on my own. Neither of them, because, even Heph too, as much as he had to learn too, as much as he was, fearful for her going into the wolf's den, so to speak. And he just had to realize that she's got her powers back. She knows what she's doing. She's got a lot of reasons to make this work, and just trust her. And that was that thing that they both had to build to. And a lot of things I wanted to say with this book subtly, but they're there.
Just a couple of things. Let's list, if you would, Carly, let's list some of the tropes off the top of your head, some of the references off the top of your head, and then you can go into full advertising mode about where we can find you, when things are coming out, all of that.
Okay, so tropes. A lot of tropes.
Lots of tropes.
I'm not going to lie. I definitely, any trope that I like and that I was comfortable with, I kind of put most of them in this book. But there is only one bed. There's frenemies. I'm actually going to call them to lovers, friends to lovers, but they're kind of frenemies to lovers. There is secret mutual pining. There is, who did this to you? Yes. Both of them. There is, man. If you girls can think of anything to help me, I would appreciate it. I'm trying to.
There was the one motorcycle trope where they're like, first she's behind him, and then she's in front of him, and he's rapping, like they're riding the motorcycle together, and she's like, I don't know what to do, and he's like, you'll be fine. I love little things like that, like all the cutesy stuff. Then Laura said, like, the big man cinnamon roll for his little animal.
Yes, even though I don't know if that's an official trope, but I definitely wanted to start advertising that as a trope.
You're like, that is a trope now.
There's some training montages. We had sexy training montages.
There is, yeah, that's right. Yeah, sexy training montage.
There was the bro montage, like they're like his bachelor party, and they're just like, but it's not like a huge party. There's, you have that.
Yeah, there's so many. I do need to list these because I squeezed so many in there. Oh, there is the good girl trope, but it actually is done a little bit more as a joke, but it's still in there. And if you listen to the audiobook, it's actually really awesome to hear. I actually squealed when I heard it recently. So there's that. I guess the Aphrodite being feminine yet badass is also kind of a trope.
Fated mates.
Yeah.
Fated mates.
Well, they're not just fated mates. There's the eternity bond.
mates.
Is that like that kind of elevates the fated mate trope?
Yes. Yeah. I like the idea of them choosing and then it being accepted. So it's like it was fated, but they chose it, and then the fate said, yes, we agree with you, basically, is the type of thing that I was going for there. That's also a little thing that might also be in my space fantasy too. I am winding it all together, friends.
Love it.
So you said list the tropes, and then what else did you say? I'm sorry.
How about some references? And I'll start you off with, we've got Star Wars in here. We've got X-Men in here. What else do we have?
We have got a lot of 80s songs references again, but Hef is a very, very big 80s fan, which is why he has even the 80s gaming consoles. We've got Super Mario. The castle that he was referring to, the Lego castle, was actually a castle that my husband built in Minecraft with a working moat, so that's why I threw it in there.
Nice.
But a lot of Mario references, a lot. He even calls her Peach, as in Princess Peach. There is actually a very small Mass Effect reference. I'm not even going to say what, because I want anybody who is familiar to catch it. I've already had one advanced reader say what it was. Like she caught it. There is one in there for Mass Effect fans. There is 80s TV show references. I know he references Flashdance,
Top Gun,
Top Gun,
yes, Ninja Turtles. pretty much anything that I could. Oh, Transformers. Yes.
Oh, God.
Oh my
Yes.
God, that's what I'm so excited for the audiobook, because she's like, I want you to do your, and I
The
know
voice.
he's such a good one. We saw on your Twitter who the narrator is, who's doing the male narrator, and I was like, oh my God, I need to hear his Optimus Prime so bad.
You're not even ready. I will be honest. I actually threw that in there because I saw on his resume that he's done the voice before for something else. So that is why that's in there. But it worked because that cartoon's from the 80s. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's Transformers, and yes, the male narrator does do the Optimus Prime voice.
I'm so excited.
So
Legit.
exciting. It's so exciting.
When you heard it, were you like, oh my, this is better than I even like thought it could be?
Oh yeah, I freaked out because I took a well-known quote that Optimus says. When he's saying that, he actually says, oh my gosh, I'm completely losing my brain right now. The main bad guy's name, Megatron. He actually is talking to Megatron and basically saying, instead of saying what he says to Aphrodite, he says, I will find you. But I switched it up to him saying to Aphrodite, and I will you, essentially. So I changed it up to just go along with Hep's personality and the fact that they had just finished doing the dirty. And yeah, it is perfect. So I couldn't be happier. And I also, the female narrator, the character's name, it looks like it's Lupe, but it's actually pronounced Leapy. The little crazy maniacal torturer with narcissists. She did her voice so perfectly. I can't even tell you. She is the perfect mix of high pitched, squealy, crazy, just frantic. It's perfect. So that's a character that will come up again, I promise, because she's so fun. She's just too fun. She's a little chaotic, little crazy thing. So Transformers, and there is basically any 80s, TV show, music, anything that I can think of. There's also a lot of references to synthwave music because that's also really huge right now and plays into cyberpunk really well. It's basically techno but mixed with saxophone and what's the keytar, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
But there's references to also famous songs that have the saxophone, like Careless Whisper or Baker Street or things like that. Lots of saxophone. Yeah, there's so much. I really, they're two nerds that I just took the opportunity to pour everything that I could into it. And yeah, so there's probably more, but I can't think of them right now.
Well, you're hyping up this audiobook so hard, so I'm so excited for that. And you're also hyping this playlist. Is the playlist something that is available for everybody, or is that just something you keep private?
No, yeah. So every single book that I do, I will initially make a work in progress playlist that's usually about 4 to 6 hours long because it's me listening to it constantly while I'm writing, while I'm working out, while I'm walking, while I'm driving. I'm listening to it constantly to keep me in the zone and to get me inspired. But then I narrow it down to maybe two hours or so for the official playlist that I'll put out for everybody with the base. Any songs that appear that I mention in the book will be on there, and then any ones that I feel are very important to the feel, the tone of the book. And those are available to everybody. I do have a Carly Spade Spotify. That's where I put them all. Yeah, sorry if you don't use Spotify, but that's what I use. Makes it really easy because all the songs are up there, and that's what I use to make the other lists, so I know they're all there. But yeah, I will always link them in the back of the ebook too. So if you do read the ebook, you can just click on it and go to the playlist. But then I will also I advertise it all over the place. I'll put it in my link tree, and anything that I put on Facebook or anything, I will always add the Pinterest mood board and the Spotify playlist that I used, so you guys can enjoy too. Because this is a fun one, the playlist for this, because it's very. It helps you get into the cyberpunky kind of mood too, because there's a lot of songs, again, synthwave songs and everything on that list too. So.
Oh, that's so exciting. Carly, where can we find you? When does the book come out? All of the things. Tell us absolutely everything so everyone knows where to pick this up.
Yeah, so I'm found on pretty much all the major socials, TikTok and Instagram. I'm on there as author Carly Spade. Twitter, it's just Carly Spade. You can find me on Facebook just looking up Carly Spade as well. I also have a readers group on Facebook called Aces of Spade. If you look that up, you'll find me. I do a lot of early teasers and stuff in my readers group, so it's fun to be in there. And sometimes I'll do special things just for the readers that I don't do elsewhere. If you go to my website, carlyspade.com, you can also sign up for my newsletter. Again, I do early exclusive reveals and things of that nature for any newsletter subscribers that you can only get if you're subscribed. I am also on Goodreads and BookBub, and I mean, pretty much any major, like I said, major social, I am on there. If you just look up Carly Spade, it's the same across the board. The book comes out February 27th, which is a Monday. And then there's going to be a lot of giveaways throughout the month of March for the book from various different tour groups on Instagram. So if you do follow on there, make sure you look out for those because there's going to be a ton of them. I'll be holding one myself as well. So if you want a chance at getting one of the promo boxes that I've been sending out to all the bloggers and Instagrammers and whatnot, definitely watch out for that because that'll be your opportunity to get one. Otherwise, if you want to order a special edition box, you can find that link in my profile on Instagram or TikTok. And it is a special box that includes a complete design of Love and Forge box. It comes with a character art book sleeve, 4 art prints, swag, a special keychain, stickers. I throw the whole thing, everything in there. You get everything, way more than even the promo boxes cover. So if you're interested in that, you can get a paperback or a hardback or both. There is going to be a hardback for this book, and I will tell you, I'm not going to even show the naked cover because I want people to be surprised. And if they post about it, awesome. But I'm not going to show it. But the naked cover, even of this hardback, is extremely sexy. So just putting it out there. But the hardback is also going to be available for this. So yeah, I'm excited.
Oh, we're so excited that you took the time to talk to us about it, and just for it to be out in the world so everybody else can share the excitement that, we've been privileged that you got to share with us too a little bit early so we can talk about it here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a blast. This is the first I've talked about it with anybody like this. So it's been really fun. And I realize even how much more I am very proud of this book, just even talking with you guys about it. So I appreciate it.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Carly.
No problem. It was fun hanging out with you as always.
So feel free to follow Carly on all her socials that she mentioned. We'll also have those in the show notes. And of course, feel free to join us on Instagram at ACOFAE Podcast. And we're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.